For today's Pauper video, we'll be playing Bannerhide Crucial? Shock? What even is a Crucial Shock? Anyway, that's beside the point. Whatever you call it, this creature is leading the current wave in a Gruul ramp renaissance that's taken hold in Pauper ever since Modern Horizons 3 dropped in June. Let me show you. Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Royce, and we are back for another Pauper video. Thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about red-green or Gruul ramp, and I'm really excited for this one. But before I go into this any further, I want to let everybody know, as some of you may already understand, I do like my longer deck text. I like to go into context. I like to go into explanations. If that's not something you're interested in seeing, feel free to use the chapters in the video to jump forward a little bit, but I want to provide a little bit of context on this deck, its history and how it's developed, so I'm going to be spending about 10 minutes just talking about the different builds of the deck before getting into the actual games. So with that said, let's get started with some context. Today we're going to be playing Gruul Ramp, and what this deck basically aims to do is to ramp into large threats with cards like Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth to enchant your lands and make them tap for additional mana, and then to reuse those lands multiple times per turn with Arbor Elf. Eventually we start dropping big threats like Writhing Chrysalis and Boarding Party and Avenging Hunter. Let me spend a little bit more time on those. Writhing Chrysalis is just a big mid-sized threat, which after the rebate is basically a 2-mana 4/5, but better for various different fringe cases. Boarding Party is a 6-mana, 6-damage hasty creature that cascades into hopefully another big thing. And Avenging Hunter is a 5-mana 5/4 trampler that lets you go into the Undercity, which gives you great value each turn that you can maintain that emblem and not take combat damage. So this deck is aiming to ramp into mid-size or big threats, start swinging face, and close it out. But before I go into this specific build, I want to talk a little bit about the history of red-green ramp over the last couple of months. So if you are familiar with Pauper, but maybe you've been out of it for a little while, you might be asking yourself where all the land destruction is. And that's interesting, because after the introduction of Modern Horizons 3, it brought two really important cards for the deck, and that's Writhing Chrysalis, which I was just talking about, basically a 2-mana 4/5 that also lets you ramp into bigger threats, but also Malevolent Rumble, which after the rebate is basically a 1-mana spell that lets you take a permanent from the top 4 and add it to your hand. So with those two cards, people just sort of realized that in this deck, it's better to be playing our own game plan than to be spending time destroying the opponent's lands. Also, that's just sort of meta-dependent. There aren't a lot of decks right now that play things like bounce lands, so land destruction is not as strong. And Grixis Affinity is still really big in the meta, and we can't destroy the indestructible bridges. So we're playing our own game plan, and we're not destroying lands. But let's look at what we're doing in this sort of more conventional version of red-green ramp before I go into the list that I'll be playing today. By the way, these lists are courtesy of, this build is from Glaciano, and this other build that I'm going to be playing in today's video is from HJC. Both of the lists are from MTG Goldfish, from 5-0 undefeated Pauper leagues. So the standard version of the deck, it plays everything that I already talked about. It also plays Eldrazi Repurposer. I didn't really mention this. Basically, it's a 3-mana 3/3 that gives you an Eldrazi spawn, which is 1 colorless mana whenever you need it. And when it dies, it also gives you an Eldrazi, or another Eldrazi spawn. But some things that it does differently from the deck I'll be playing today is it plays this Land Cycler package. So we've got some number of copies. In this deck, it's 4 total of Land Cyclers, which are each 6-mana creatures that you can discard to get an associated land. So Oliphant gets you a mountain, and if you cast it, it's a 6/4 trampler that gives something else a boost. And Generous Ent gets you a forest, and when you cast it, it's a 5/7 reacher that gets you a food for some healing. This deck is also playing Annoyed Altasaur, which is a second Cascader. So we're playing 4 Annoyed Altasaur, 4 Boarding Party, and of course the dream is to Annoyed Altasaur, cascade into Boarding Party, and Boarding Party cascade into like an Avenging Hunter or a Writhing Chrysalis for just a ton of value off of a 7-mana play. It does come up sometimes, even if it's a little bit inconsistent because we don't have many ways to stack our top few cards. And this version of the deck is playing fewer mid-sized threats than the one I'll be running today, but more top-end, so once you can get up to a high mana total, you have more ability to sort of close out the game and to play more relevant threats. The sideboard has just a random collection of red and green spells that are hating to the meta, with Breath Weapon for the Go Wide decks, Elves, White Weenie, Mono Red, Cast into the Fire, Deglamour, and Gorilla Shaman. I won't go into them individually, but they're all artifact hate cards, primarily here for affinity. And then Healer of the Glade is a single green for a 1/2 that heals you 3, so the stats and the ability match up well into Mono Red, along with some other aggressive burn decks. There are definitely some flex slots in the standard build here. This build is not playing any copies of Nyxborn Hydra, which I'll go into in a second, but it is playing 3 copies of You Meet in a Tavern. If you haven't seen this card, it's a modal spell, where the first mode is basically a Lead the Stampede effect, but instead of Lead the Stampede being 2 and a green, this is 2 and 2 green. So you look at the top 5, put all the creatures into your hand, and the rest of the cards go on the bottom. But it also has a second mode where you can anthem your board and give everything +2/+2 to help close out the game if you are already pretty tall and pretty wide. And I think that about sums it up for the standard build here. It's on 17 lands, that's pretty common, but with all of the land cyclers, it's a total of 21 pseudo lands, so we're going to be hitting our land drops pretty often. And let's go into the deck that we'll be building today, or that we'll be playing today. And this build has a little bit of a different thesis to it, whereas Glyciano's list, and I would say the more standard, historically common version of red-green ramp, is trying to ramp into our big spells and take things over in like the mid to late game. This build is instead prioritizing mid-range or small to mid-range threats like Jewel Thief and Bannerhide Crucial to sort of maintain parity with the opponent during the early to mid game. So this deck is aiming to curve out and drop a threat every turn, and it's less explosive in the late game, but it's hoping to sort of more so keep pace. Let's go into those spells that I just brought up. Jewel Thief is 2 and a green for a 3/3 that has Vigilance and Trample, and it creates a treasure token when it enters. That treasure token is useful to be able to cast our Writhing Chrysalis or Boarding Party even if we don't have red mana, or just ramp into something else, or keep it for a rainy day. Bannerhide Crucial is really cool. This is a card that's sort of taken off in these lists over the last couple of weeks, and it's been fun to see. This is a 3 and a green for a 4/4 Trampler that has 2 additional abilities as well. It has Reinforce 2, so for 1 and a green you can discard it, and at instant speed, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Let me tell you, so many players are not expecting combat tricks in red-green ramp, so to be able to kind of get them is really satisfying. Then it also has Scavenge for 5 and 2 green, which says when you pay that mana cost, you can exile this card from your graveyard and put 4 +1/+1 counters on target creature at sorcery speed. So this is both a nice threat that you can drop for 4 mana that you're pretty happy with. A 4 mana 4/4 Trampler is decent, or you can reinforce it, and however it goes to the graveyard, whether you play it as a combat threat and it dies, or you reinforce it. In the late game, when you have tons of mana and not as much to do with it, you can pay 7 to give something +4/+4, which is really nice on a Trampler. We are also on 2 copies of this new Foundations Downshift. This used to be an uncommon, but it's now legal in Pauper as a Foundations, and this is a modal spell that costs 1 green. You can either search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle, or it says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So that's 2 things that we are wanting to be doing in the early game. Since we have a little bit of a lower land count in the deck, we want to make sure that we have some way to hit our land drops. And then in the mid to late game, being able to fight an important threat or just take something off the board to get in for additional combat damage is pretty nice. And speaking of lands, this build is only on 16 instead of 17, and we only have 2 additional pseudo lands with 2 Bushwhack. We don't have any of the land cyclers, so no copies of Generous, Ent, or Oliphant. So some inconsistency from difficulty hitting your lands is present in this build, but we also don't have the Avenging Altasaurs, the Annoyed Altasaurs in this build, so we don't need to hit as many lands. As long as you can start dropping your Eldrazi Repurposers and Jewel Thieves, you can usually scrape some mana together to cast the biggest things that you have to play, which is the Boarding Party. The other sort of pseudo biggest thing that we have to play, though, is Nyxborn Hydra. This is sometimes splashed in the standard version of red-green ramp, but this deck is playing a full 4 copies. So aside from some counter synergy with Boarding Party, where you really hate to cascade into the Nyxborn Hydra because it just gives you a 0/1, this is a pretty good card if you actually get to cast it. So it has 2 different, basically, ways that you can play it. So you can just cast it as a creature for X and a green, and for each mana that you pay into the X, it gets +1/+1, a +1/+1 counter. So it's a 4 mana 3/4, a 5 mana 4/5, a 6 mana 5/6, so all below rate, but pretty flexible. And it also has Trample and Reach to help you close the game or block pesky flyers. Reach is also important to be able to protect the initiative from the Avenging Hunter. But it also has this cool Bestow ability, where you can pay X green, and for each mana that you pay into X, it gives Enchanted Creature +1/+1, and then when that creature dies, this thing is still left behind as a creature as well. So that sort of gives you some resiliency. It lets you get some surprise damage in by giving a creature that already has, or that doesn't have summoning sickness, a ton of extra power and trample. And then if that creature should die, you still have the Nyxborn Hydra left in its place. The sideboard here is definitely sort of more streamlined. We're only on 4 cards, and it's composed of really a lot of Broodscale hate, with 4 copies of Vines of Vastwood being able to target the Broodscale when they try to drop the sadistically, and the Seal of Fire is here to do the same thing, dealing 2 damage to any target, so you can just play this in the early game, and then they're going to have to deal with this and have enough mana to pay 2 with the Broodscale and put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it just makes their life more difficult. This deck is also on some red hate, with 3 copies of Sandstorm, deal 1 damage to each attacking creature for only a single green mana, very efficient, and then 4 copies of Breath Weapon, which is also good in the red matchups, but a lot of other decks as well. White Weenie, Orzhov Blade, Elves, things like that to clean up low to the ground threats. And there's the build overall. I hope you all really enjoyed today's video. I think it'll be interesting to sort of play this more early to mid game, sort of stompy-ish version of red-green ramp. I think it has some great strengths in being able to play sort of more early to mid game combat threats. And I think that might be worth the cost of having sort of less explosive turns in the late game. So let's go ahead and give it a try. Remember, if you like this Pauper content and want to see more Pauper content like this, please leave a like, a comment, and or a subscription if you haven't already. It's super helpful to the growth of the channel, and it helps me in the YouTube algorithm. You all know all about that, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again, and let's get right into the games. We are starting round 1 of the tournament versus Cross D8. It looks like we won the dice roll, so let's go first, and we are hoping for good luck and minimal misplays here. I've been having a bit of some issues with some lag recently, so hopefully we don't have too much of that. This is a keepable start, and the opponent will also keep 7. I'm going to launch it off with a forest into probably a Utopia Sprawl here for red, just to stay flexible. Sometimes I'll Utopia Sprawl later, just in case, you know, they destroy my lands or something like that, but I think it's okay to just lead off like this. On turn 2, we already have a... Okay, we've got the Arbor Elf here. I don't know why the art isn't showing, but having some issues, like I said. So, what I could do is... Do I want to get the Arbor Elf down right now? I think it's more important to get Eldrazi Repurposer online. But I could Arbor Elf and Malevolent Rumble. Very interesting. Okay, you know, I think I've changed my mind. So I'm going to go ahead and... So, play the forest. Tap this for green. Wild Growth, enchant this forest. This taps for 3, and then I can Arbor Elf plus Rumble. Sounds good. Now against the Seething Landscape. This is blue, black, red. They are pretty likely to have removal for the Arbor Elf, but it is what it is. If they have it, they have it. So let's just pick up some good things to do. We're looking here for Avenging Hunter. Okay. Yeah, Avenging Hunter is pretty good. Just a turn 3 initiative. I think that's better than Writhing Chrysalis. Let's do it. It can help us hit our 4th land drop as well. And the thing is, even if they destroy our Arbor Elf here, we can still drop the Avenging Hunter. Now against these colors, I am expecting some flyers. We might be seeing a Spell Stutter Sprite or something like that. So they could definitely flash something in to take the initiative. Just casting a Sneaky Snacker, okay. And destroying the Arbor Elf, makes sense. So in that case, I might consider not doing the Avenging Hunter. Let's see what else I have. Okay, so we'll play our land. And I could cast the Avenging Hunter, or I could double Eldrazi Repurposer. Not sure which is better here. So if I just cast the Avenging Hunter, they take the initiative, and then they kill it, I'm in big trouble. So I think I need to go with my Repurposers here. Having some lag issues again. Okay, that gets casted. And then we will put down another one. So the Eldrazi Repurposers are pretty adept at pressuring them. They have some trouble with X3s, because they would need to double block or something like that. We'll see if they do something like play a Ninja here to get some card advantage going. They decline. Okay. Alright, Bannerhide Crucial is interesting. Let's go ahead and right now we have 5, 6, 7 mana available. If we put down the Avenging Hunter, then we will have... We're close to being able to cast the Avenging Hunter and the Bannerhide Crucial. I think let's just attack first and see what happens. Okay. They're gonna chump. Fine. They'll take 3. Now I think I want to try to cast the Bannerhide Crucial. If this gets counterspelled, then they can't Brainstorm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Let's do this. Okay, there's the counterspell. So they don't have the insta-brainstorm for the Spellstutter Sprite. Plus, now that that's in my graveyard, I can make one of these a 7/7. Alright, what do they pick up? The Swamp? They pick up the Swamp, so they don't have Snuff Out right now. They pretty much only have Counterspell. They could have Boomerang or Snap, but I don't think that's super common to see. They could have a Brainstorm now to get back their Sneaky Snacker. But now that I have additional threats on the board, I think it's pretty safe to play this. And if it gets counterspelled, then I'm fine with that too. Just being able to hit in for 6 at a time is pretty good. And let's just take a green source and attack. Like I said, if they want to take the initiative back, that's pretty much just fine. And then we will cast the Arbor Elf, and then we'll see if they go ahead and Brainstorm to get their Snacker back. Okay, they don't have the Snacker, or they can't return the Snacker. What are we going to see now? They have main deck Suffocating Fumes, I think. Are they going to take the Monarch? Okay, that's fine. They didn't put their Swamp back down, so that tells me they don't have Snuff Out. So I think now I just have the win. There's not much they can do for 1 blue. Maybe a Spell Pierce. Let's forge up the Trample creature. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's just start with a Rumble. We'll take another Avenging Hunter. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 with the Arbor Elf. Okay, I guess we'll try this. I don't think there's anything they can really have. We'll just trap them. And then pretty much full swing. Okay, they take 10. Alright, GG. Pretty explosive start. Really strong turn 3, even though the opponent was able to resolve the Sneaky Snacker to potentially steal back the initiative. They didn't have the Snuff Outs that they needed in time, or multiple copies. They didn't have the Brainstorm to get back the Snacker. So against this matchup, it looked like pretty hard Dimir Control. This deck can play Terrors. It can play Gurmogs, Murmuring Mystics. Vines of Vastwood, I think, is decent. This is... and they're likely to bring in Cast Downs, maybe not Agony Warps, but Cast Downs, Snuff Outs. This doesn't work against Extract a Confession. This would work against any Snaps or Boomerangs they might be playing, so I think I'll bring in the Vines. It's possible I should bring in Breath Weapon to answer their Spellstutter. Excuse me, their Spellstutter sprites. I don't think that sprite is that good against me, so I think I'm fine to skip that. Usually, when I sideboard, I usually like to take out Boarding Party. especially because it has sort of anti-synergy with these sort of more reactive spells. And what else am I taking out? A Nyxborn Hydra. Maybe a Nyxborn Hydra. I mean, dedicating all of this mana into a potential counterspell is pretty rough. So I'll take that out and just try to beat them down in the early to mid game. Let's go into game 2. Alright, so this looks fine. We have a turn 1 Arbor Elf into Utopia Sprawl into Eldrazi Repurposer. We're going to need some more help to get up to the Avenging Hunter, but this seems okay. Let's see what they do. There's also the possibility that we should turn 1 Utopia Sprawl. So if we turn 1 Arbor Elf and they kill our Arbor Elf, we can only go up to 2 mana and then we just have to pass on turn 2. But if we do a land enchantment first, it's harder for them to interact, and then we can pretty safely Eldrazi Repurposer. So I think I'm going to take sort of the slightly slower, less explosive start here. Let's enchant this for red. And we'll just hope they don't have boomerangs. But boomerang is always going to get me, and that would be good to find out. Let's see what they get. They'll find a swamp. Okay, so Snuff Out is online. They have Spellstutter Sprite available right now, so let's not fall into that trap. I'm just going to go with a forest into an Eldrazi Repurposer. They have a Brainstorm, that's fine. And I have a 3/3 and an Eldrazi spawn. Your move. So next turn, we will be able to drop the Avenging Hunter potentially, especially if they are not leaving double blue up. Alright, so they're going to leave open double blue. Got it. So I have access to up to 5 mana. I can safely Malevolent Rumble. It could get Spell Pierced, Counterspelled, but it can't get Spellstutter Sprited. I'm going to start by attacking. 2 mana. Cast down. Agony Warp, that's fine. So now that that happened, I'm going to get an Eldrazi spawn. I can play a land. So I have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. If I play the Eldrazi Repurposer, I'll have 4 left. But what I can do is Arbor Elf. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can Arbor Elf into Avenging Hunter here. And as long as they don't have Force Spike, I should be okay. They don't have the mana anymore to flash in a Spellstutter Sprite, nor to, just respawn to this Arbor Elf here. And then we're going to start to resolve more creatures on the next turn to be able to take back the initiative if they take it from us. We already have a couple of red sources, so I'm going to take a forest. And I will pass. It's interesting that they left in the Agony Warp. I guess it's good against the Arbor Elf. Okay, so they take out the Avenging Hunter. Got it. And they will Lorien Revealed. Let's see if they get an Aquifer or an Island. They get an Island. Okay. So they'll have 4 mana available. They can use that to take the Monarch, potentially. Brainstorm. Okay. Sorry the art is not showing on these cards. I don't know what's going on with my client. So on this next turn, we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. 7 if they leave the Arbor Elf. So they're going to double Lorien Revealed here. Interesting. I think they used one of those to clear a Brainstorm. So they still have a Spellstutter Sprite available, but not a counterspell. Okay. Of course they could lose focus. Yes, we will just try to forge up the Arbor Elf. See if that happens. It does. Got it. Okay. So let's go ahead and they're going to want to flash in a Spellstutter Sprite. So we can play this land. Do we start with a Malevolent Rumble to see if we can find something with reach? If we Malevolent Rumble, we'll still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I will Malevolent Rumble, and I think I can tap this mountain. Let's see if they, I don't know, Spell Pierce? Something like that? Okay, Bannerhide Crew Shock, or a Wild Growth. I think I'll take this one, just for some more pressure. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to Eldrazi Repurposer into Bannerhide Crew Shock and just not attack with the Arbor Elf this turn. Alright, now we have a Trampler to try to take back the initiative. And we will pass. There's their Spellstutter Sprite. We expected as much. So now we can more safely put down this Arbor Elf. So let's see if they try to take the initiative and also resolve the Monarch. We know that they have a Contaminated Aquifer in hand, although I think they played this Island. So in hand, they have an Island, an Aquifer, and some other stuff. There's the island. So they still have the aquifer. Ponder, okay. They don't use the ability, so they leave the cards in that order. They're going to brainstorm, okay. And they are passing. Got it, okay. My turn. Alright, so currently I have 14 damage. We'll just start by attacking. If they remove something, then I can kick my Vines of Vastwood and try to win. Should I bait them first? I can try to bait them. Are you okay with Eldrazi Repurposer? And bait successful. Alright, they could still have a Snuff Out. So let's go ahead and attack. So if I have Vines right now, I kind of get blown out by the Snuff Out. So I think I'm just going to hold it for later. Alright. After all, I've got Tramplers and I'm pretty wide. So let's trap them. Alright, and now we are able to put down an Arbor Elf. So they're in the position where they have a decent chunk of mana, but anything they would do with it would sort of be pretty slow, whether that's a Murmuring Mystic. Gurmag Angler would be alright, and we just close it out. We'll give him the GG well played, and move on to the next round. Pretty commanding. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, here we are in round 2 of the event. It looks like it's not keepable. We don't have any lands. Let's give the opponent the good old GLHF and mulligan down to 6. They're keeping 7 and choosing to play first. This looks okay. We don't have a lot to do, but we do have a Malevolent Rumble to pick something up. I still don't love it, but I think we have to keep. So we'll throw back a Forest. We have a turn 1 Sprawl into potentially a turn 2 Repurposer or something like that if we find one. Hopeless Nightmare is okay. Let's go ahead and discard a Mountain. Alright, the opponent is on Hopeless Nightmare, so this could be Mono Black Burn, Mono Black Devotion, it could be some sort of build of Orzhov Blade. Avenging Hunter is okay, so we'll just Sprawl. Enchanting this for red, and pass. Assuming it's a burn deck or a control deck, Bushwhack might not be super important, so that might be fine to discard. Vampire's Kiss, okay, looks like it's Mono Black Burn. And we do find a 3-drop, that's pretty nice, so we can go ahead and play our Forest. We could go with a Malevolent Rumble and have 2 mana open, but not much we can do with that, so let's just play the Jewel Thief. So the key here will be putting on some aggression to beat them down even through their healing that they're going to get off of their Vampire's Kiss and Alms of the Vein, things like that. Next turn, we don't quite have access to the Avenging Hunter unless we pick up a land, but we can still Rumble for like another Jewel Thief or Eldrazi Repurposer or something like that. Opponent plays Bump in the Night, and then passes the turn, maybe preparing to discard some things with blood tokens. Maybe they're a little bit flooded. Okay. Let's go ahead and Rumble. Given that we have the treasure token, if we need red mana for some reason, we can get it from there. I don't think there's anything that we can cast that we'll need red for. Alright, so we have Utopia Sprawl, Boarding Party, Bannerhide, Cruise Shock. So if I take the Boarding Party, next turn I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. I think my plan is to... So next turn I'll have 5 mana. I can use Avenging Hunter to pick up another land. Am I counting correctly? I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the spawn. And then Avenging Hunter gets a land, and then we'll be at 4 mana. So we won't be able to play that Boarding Party anytime soon. We also can't cast the Bannerhide Cruise Shock this turn. I think I'm just going to take the Utopia Sprawl, actually. So let's go ahead and... We don't have an Arbor Elf anywhere in sight, but they're not likely to have main deck land destruction. So I can Utopia Sprawl for green on this forest in case we pick up an Arbor Elf. And I will attack. Alright. I'm expecting them to loot away some lands or something like that. They're not. That's very interesting that all they did last turn was Bump in the Night. I don't know what that means about their hand. Tyrant's Choice, okay. So I got messed up by this one time. Torture gets more votes or the vote is tied. So I'm going to vote for Death to try to lose my Eldrazi spawn. But it didn't work. Okay. If they had also voted for Death, I could just sack a spawn. They're going to go ahead and pass. Okay. This is, you know, potentially doable. We've got a Nyxborn Hydra. So let's go ahead and just Avenging Hunter here. And let's do it with the Eldrazi spawn, not the treasure. Now, I think the spawn actually has more value right here, because we already have red mana from the Utopia Sprawl. 2 mana. Oh, you're playing Cast Down. That's very interesting. Okay, main deck Cast Down, sure. So with that said, I think I'm going to grab a Forest, and I'm going to Bushwhack right now just to be mana efficient. And we can just find another Forest. We'll just take these out of our deck, set up our next turn. We don't have lethal next turn, but we do the turn after that. So if we can hold on for a little bit longer. They currently are not able to flash back the Bump in the Night. They would need some red mana. Sign in Blood on themselves, okay. And a Rakdos Carnarium, sure. So there's their red mana, meaning they can flash back the Bump in the Night next turn. Can they deal 3 this turn? Eviscerator's Insight, sacking a Blood. Okay, interesting. Are they likely to have Snuff Out? Interesting question. Because I can trap them here down to 9. Jewel Thief will get them down to 6. I might actually have the win here if they don't have Snuff Out. Oh wait, no, I'm forging here. I don't think Forge is enough. Okay, so we'll play our land. Oh, but we can Avenging Hunter to trap them. But no need to hurry on that. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is only +4 here. I can only get them down to 5, which is enough to get them with the trap next turn. So I think I'm going to do it. And then I have the Avenging Hunter to take back the initiative if they're able to somehow steal it. Of course, Snuff Out would be pretty good. Let's see how much more they can burn me. I know they have a Swamp in hand, so they could flash back the Bump in the Night. But that won't be enough. There's a Vampire's Kiss, okay. So do you have a Tyrant's Choice and a Bump in the Night? A Hopeless Nightmare, okay. So that's not enough. I'll discard a Writhing Chrysalis. 3 mana remaining. So now they need 2 burn spells. There's a Tyrant's Choice, okay. Let's vote for Death. Okay. They voted Torture. Do they have the Bump in the Night? They have a Serrated Scorpion. Okay. So who wins here? Or is it a tie? I don't know how this works. Alright. I don't know anything that we could get that would make this better, but let's just go ahead and Avenging Hunter just in case. I'm sure this is a pretty basic ruling on if this is a tie or a win for me, but let's find out. Alright, looks like a win. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, because that goes on the stack, but the lethal damage is like a state-based action, something like that. Alright, so what do we have here? Finds of Vastwood is okay. They're running some removal, and they might be bringing in some more. So I think that's alright, but to be honest, I would rather just maintain my game plan and try to win as quickly as possible. They might be bringing in Contaminated Ground, so that's something we should be aware of, so maybe we should avoid stacking up our land enchantments too high. The opponent has not seen Bannerhide Cruise Shock yet, I don't think, unless we ditched one with a Malevolent Rumble. If they just have a pile of removal here, if they go like max Cast Down, Snuff Out, Defile or something, I might go ahead and bring in the Vines. Alright, what do we think about this? We've got a couple of lands and a land enchantment. It's not obvious what's going to happen yet, but I think this is keepable. And they are mulliganing. They keep 6. Okay. Piranha Marsh. Interesting. So it's a crime land. I bet they have Jagged Barrens as well. Okay, so let's just start off with another Utopia Sprawl for red. And see if they contaminated Aquifer. If they do, then this has to enchant a forest. So it will fall off. Or not Contaminated Aquifer, Contaminated Ground. So this would fall off, and then I would have to Rumble. Okay, they're just going to Sign in Blood to get back their card advantage. but they're going slow, so that's fine with me. Alright, we keep hitting our lands, pretty convenient. So I can just Jewel Thief and then next turn Avenging Hunter. Nothing too complicated here. We might want to hold Bushwhack to push through a Scorpion and get in for non-trample damage. Alright, so plenty of cards in their hand now at this point. So they can... I don't really know. I wonder if they have Death Touch cards. Serrated Scorpion, I'm not too worried about that. And another one. Okay. Do they have a third land? They do not. Okay, that's pretty rough. With that in mind, is there any reason to go ahead and Bushwhack? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. We can go down to 4 if we Rumble, which would allow us to Jewel Thief Bushwhack. No, I don't think it really makes any sense. I think we just go Avenging Hunter. Let's attack first, because if we pre-play the Avenging Hunter... no, it won't matter, because this has Vigilance anyway. But let's attack. They should block with both there to prevent all trample damage. This way they take 1 life for no reason. Alright, and then let's just go with Avenging Hunter. Do we pick up a swamp or sorry, a mountain or a forest? I think I can just pick up another forest. I've already got the red source here, and I've got Bushwhack if they mess with this land enchantment. And for most things, a forest is superior. Are they considering an end step snuff out here? Okay, they don't. They find their third land. It's pretty good. They decide to pass. So they might be holding up Cast Down, or Eviscerator's Insight, something like that. But Eviscerator's Insight against Tramplers is not amazing. So let's just distribute our damage and put the Forge onto the Jewel Thief. This is probably going to be the prime Cast Down target now. Alright. Draw our card. It's a Utopia Sprawl. That's mana neutral. That's fine. Let's distribute it between lands. So we have... Okay, before I make other decisions, let's go ahead and Utopia Sprawl. And I'm just going to use Sprawl for green here. Again, we can pick up a mountain if we need it. Alright, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mana. I've already played my land for the turn. I can... Rumble. Okay. Let's use this land in case I pick up a Writhing Chrysalis that I want to play. Bannerhide Crucial. Or another Avenging Hunter. I think I just want to keep applying more pressure with the Avenging Hunters. The Crucial does have the Graveyard ability. So now we can Jewel Thief and Bushwhack. Let's just go ahead and attack. They might cast this down and then try to take the initiative from me by attacking with the Serrated Scorpion. Yep. Do they take the 5? They do take the 5. Okay. So with that said, we can go ahead and Jewel Thief. And then there is some possibility that I should Bushwhack the Serrated Scorpion so they can't draw off of it with an Eviscerator's Insight. A Snuff Out would get me if I did that. I think the argument just isn't good enough to Bushwhack here. I would rather Bushwhack some other threat that I don't know that they play. Keep myself flexible for the unknown. And if they spend mana to Eviscerator's Insight a Serrated Scorpion, I'm not too mad at it. It's just too slow. Next turn, I will have 8 mana, counting my Spawn, my Treasure Token, and my 6 mana from lands. Cast down on the Jewel Thief, okay. And they're going to get in with the Serrated Scorpion. That's fine. I will just block that with the Spawn. Get some mana for some reason. So they have another Serrated Scorpion. Alright, so let's get to our next turn here and then count our damage. We're going to trap them. Alright, and then how much mana do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so we can get +5 here. Putting this up to 10, meaning that we will trample over this for 8. So that's not enough. But we could Bushwhack it first, but then they would get the healing off of it, so that's not good either. I can Malevolent Rumble. So I'm thinking I want to use this other Avenging Hunter. But let's just Malevolent Rumble first and see what we find. Probably just Eldrazi Repurposer here. It's fine. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana left. I don't think we've played a land yet this turn, so let's Bushwhack for a mountain. That'll be okay. Because, yeah, Bushwhack on this won't really help me get in for more damage. Let me know if I missed lethal here. I don't think I did. And let's leave up our creatures as blockers. Draw another card. And I will just attack with the Avenging Hunter. If they take it, that's fine. If they block, that's fine. Them getting sort of starved on lands was tough for sure. Alright, we'll do the same thing. We will block one and sacrifice a spawn. If they manage to take the initiative, again, that's okay. They just get a basic, and I can take it back with my Tramplers. There's a possibility that I should even not sack the spawn just so I can enchant it with a Nyxborn Hydra. Eviscerator's Insight, that's fine. 2 mana. So here, if they cast down the Avenging Hunter and swing in, I should not block. I should just leave this to be able to be enchanted with the Nyxborn Hydra. Okay, another Eviscerator's Insight, so they are out of mana. And I have 10 damage. Give them the GG, well played. Alright, we're 2-0. Let's move on to the next round. I'll see you there. We are starting round 3 of the event. We're currently 2-0. Let's try to keep up that momentum, and we get a good start by winning the dice roll. This is unfortunately an unkeepable hand. We'll wish them GLHF and take a mulligan. This one looks pretty good, although I can't see the pictures on the cards. We've got a couple lands, a couple land enchantments, a Malevolent Rumble, and a Writhing Chrysalis. I think in this situation, I should probably keep. And they're starting on 7, huh? And let's put back one of those land enchantments. I'm going to send back the Wild Growth. Now, there's some likelihood that perhaps I should be keeping enough mana to Writhing Chrysalis without any other help, but I think it's fine. I would rather just have the ability to cast multiples. So we'll enchant this for red. And pass. Opponent starts with a Great Furnace into a pass. Looks like they might be Rakdos Madness. If they were keeping 7 and they are on mono red, that's a little bit interesting. Okay, we have a Forest into a Wild Growth and a Rumble, huh? So I think first I can go ahead and Malevolent Rumble to see what's going on. Well, no, if I do that, then I won't be able to... This won't be mana neutral this turn. This will be mana minus. So if they are playing a red deck, I don't think they have any land destruction in their main deck. Let's Rumble with the red and green. And we can get a Jewel Thief, Eldrazi Repurposer, a Bannerhide Crucial. Next turn, we will have 5 mana available, with which we can cast a Chrysalis into an Eldrazi Repurposer or a Jewel Thief. With multiple Chrysalises, I think that the Eldrazi spawn from the Repurposer might be nice. You might be able to buff one of them with that, so let's go ahead and do that and pass. Wait. Yeah, nothing to do with our remaining mana. Just trying to make sure I get the sequencing right. So next turn, I can cast a Chrysalis, and currently I'm probably doing that with the Eldrazi spawn, so that way I can use the green and the 2 spawns from the Chrysalis to cast the Eldrazi Repurposer. Okay, as expected, it looks like they are Rakdos Madness. I'm expecting a Vampire's Kiss here. Yep. So this is a little bit of a hard matchup. We don't have Weather the Storm in the sideboard to help out, so we just need to go fast. I actually don't know for sure that it's a hard matchup, but it seems to me that it is. Alright, so since we have the Mountain, that means that we can go Chrysalis into Chrysalis, which I think is better. Now we are going to have to be careful about the way that we actually spend our Eldrazi spawns and that we allow them to resolve along the way, so we don't just sort of get, you know, bolted or galvanic blasted at the top of the stack. Alright, 2 Chrysalis, and we are almost out of stuff, although we will have a Bannerhide Crucial to buff something eventually. We're currently swinging for 10. The opponent can put out a chump blocker with a Sneaky Snacker if they have a Grab the Prize or something like that. Faithless Looting. Alright, so no Sneaky Snacker this turn. So will they have a Kitchen Imp as a blocker, potentially? And also no... Okay, so 2 Sneaky Snackers. Got it. Did they pick up a 3rd land? Right now I have... Alright. So let's move into our next turn and see how much mana we actually have available. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is basically 2 mana after the rebate, leaving us with 5 for the Bannerhide Crucial. I could simply swing for 14 right now. It's not bad, but I think I would rather get more done than that, and I can just swing for additional damage with the Bannerhide Crew Shock. Essentially hasty damage later. Yeah, I can go boarding party here. I don't think that's going to be lethal, probably. But that's probably the best thing to be doing, and then I have multiple Bannerhides in the graveyard. So we will sacrifice these one at a time, just to be prudent. Although I don't think they can do much about them with their single Vault of Whispers. In the sideboard against this deck, we should be expecting Contaminated Ground, potentially. I don't know, it's not ubiquitous, but we should be careful not to stack our lands too high. Yep, I'll cast that. And let's go ahead and attack for 18, put them to 4. They're going to be looking for something here, so I wouldn't be surprised if they blood token something away, blood token away a land or something. What I am missing in this situation is trample damage, but I'm so wide that I don't think it really matters. I can't quite Bannerhide Crew Shock on the Eldrazi spawn. In fact, I can't quite use it right now at all, because I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana, but either way, I should be fine here. They decline to blood token, and they just scoop game 1. So game 2, I am a little bit torn on how much I should be sideboarding against Madness. There is a possibility that I want the breath weapons to clear out their flyers, and that might actually be decent if we are on the draw. It might be sort of harder to establish a board that will sort of force them to block. So I'm going to try the breath weapons. I could use Vines of Vastwood to protect my Jewel Thieves and Eldrazi Repurposers or Bannerhide Crew Shocks against their bolts and Galvanic Blasts, but I don't think that's the move. I'm going to bring in the breath weapons, and what I've been doing sort of throughout the video is typically removing the non-trample damage, since it can also cascade into breath weapon, which is a miss. And then I can ask myself what else I should take out. And I think in this matchup, Repurposer is not amazing because it can get bolted. And also, sometimes it giving us an Eldrazi spawn that's going to get swept up by the breath weapon is not really a good thing, so we'll take out a Repurposer just as soon as the program reloads. Alright, so we are taking out a Repurposer and submitting. I keep checking my task manager, and my program is lagging nonetheless, so, let me know if you've had this experience and if you think it is my computer still, or if it's just Magic Online being Magic Online. Okay, so this is definitely a strange hand. We have a ton of lands, and an Arbor Elf and a Malevolent Rumble. It's a little bit slow. This is a turn 3 Chrysalis, though, even if they can kill the Arbor Elf. So I can curve out 1, 2, 3, assuming they don't kill the Eldrazi spawn off of the Malevolent Rumble, so I think I'm going to keep it. Alright, they play the tap land, so next turn they'll have 2 mana, which means that they might be setting up for a Grab the Prize or something similar, so maybe we can catch them off kilter by making them respawn to this Arbor Elf. Little do they know, if they don't respawn to it, it's not doing much on turn 2, but forcing them to sort of take half a turn off I think is worth it here. They're going to Trespasser's Curse. Okay, that's pretty good. So I was saying earlier that's not really ubiquitous, but we do unfortunately see it here. Alright, so we have up to 3 mana with the Arbor Elf. So I think I'm going to start by playing the Mountain and going with Malevolent Rumble. And they're gonna drain us for 1. We pick up we don't need more lands. I think Jewel Thief is fine here. Nyxborn Hydra we won't need for a little while. So we could definitely Malevolent Rumble again, and I think that's actually not a bad idea. Just to keep churning. So I don't think in this deck I find that I'm really looking for something in specific. I'm just always looking for action. Unfortunately, we kind of miss on that one, and we just have to take a forest. So currently no Bannerhides in the graveyard. So I can draw into those, or I can mill them with further Malevolent Rumbles. But that is 3 Rumbles in the graveyard because 1 Rumble hit another Rumble. Let's see if they have their 3rd land. Currently, I can Chrysalis, which is going to drain me for 3, and I can also Jewel Thief. So that seems pretty decent. I know I'm taking a lot of damage. Hold on a second. No, I have to use the spawn, because I need 1 green for the Jewel Thief. You might be seeing a cast down here. That wouldn't be too much of a surprise. Okay, we'll let that resolve. Yep. And let's see if they let this get up to a 4/5 or if they Galvanic Blast it. They do have the Galvanic Blast, it looks like. Wait, what is this? Discard a card or pay 5. Lightning Axe deals 5 damage to target creature. Ah, okay. So they're madnessing out a Kitchen Imp. Very interesting. So that's going to get in for 2 damage. Oh, wrong card. Jewel Thief. So I am at an effective 14 right now, and probably lower, because I'm going to have to play more creatures. That early Trespasser's Curse was pretty good. Now the one thing they haven't really done so far is get some additional value by getting their draw 2 engines on sort of in play. But it looks like they're doing it now. They are grabbing the prize, burning me for 2, putting me into 12, and then they've got 2 Kitchen Imps, which are going to put me down to 8. And then they still have a land drop, so I could be down to 7 with a Jagged Barrens. I do still have more breath weapons in the deck, so I could top deck one of those and maybe hold on, but it's looking like a loss here. Unfortunately, although Jewel Thief has some good keywords, it does not have reach. Okay, so they missed their 4th land drop, which is something at least. So now we definitely have to stem the bleeding from these Kitchen Imps, but I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. So we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana with the Arbor Elf. Writhing Chrysalis is an effective 2. So we could Writhing Chrysalis and a Nyxborn Hydra, which I think we'll have to do. It's looking pretty over. But let's see what we can pull off. And I think I'm going to prefer to just cast the Hydra as a creature, even though I take 1 more damage from that, because getting it up to 4 does matter against bolts. But they're at 1,000,000 life, and we are out of action, so it's looking like our hand just did not match up well this time into theirs. Ah, we had an attack with Jewel Thief that we missed there, but I think this game is mostly over anyway. And there's the Galvanic Blast for the win. Alright, let's concede. So we know they're on Lightning Axe, which can deal 5 damage to a target creature. So I think that I might take the bold move here to actually remove some of the Writhing Chrysalises. It is pretty rough into their Trespasser's Curse. And now that we are on the play, I think I'm going to go ahead and get off the Breath Weapon plan. You know what, since we're on the play, I think I'm going to go back to the standard loadout. We're going to be 1 turn ahead. We will just try to outspeed them. Yeah, I'll go first. Okay, this is a fine start. Nothing too exciting, but we do have currently a turn 2 Rumble into a turn 3 Repurposer plus Bushwhack, if we want to. We could also Bushwhack on turn 1 just to pick up our 3rd land. It's not the worst. That way we can Rumble for creatures. Okay, sure. We should play our Forest next, because they already know about it. And cast a Rumble. Any creatures that I can get on the board before they Trespassers Curse me, it feels like a win. Alright, so I can get some land enchantments. That is mana neutral. So next turn I'll have access to 4 mana. So I can Utopia Sprawl and still cast my Bannerhide if I want to. Or I can just pick up another medium-sized threat. But these Eldrazi Repurposers, I think, are a little bit of a liability because it's 2 Trespassers Curse pings. So I'm just going to take the Utopia Sprawl to ramp into a big Nyxborn Hydra a little bit faster. Alright, Jagged Barrens. I'm happy to see that instead of a Trespasser's Curse. That's good. And then Voldaren Epicure, not a problem. So it's a pretty good time, actually, to play my Eldrazi Repurposer here. So let's see how that might fit in. So I can Mountain, and then I can Utopia Sprawl, enchanting the other forest. And if I enchant it for red, no, I think I need to enchant it for green. And then I can Tap here, and Rumble, paying with red. And this is going to let me put down the repurposer. I don't really need any of these things. Probably the Arbor Elf out of all of them, since I already have a Hydra. And then let's use the floating green to put our Eldrazi repurposer onto the table. Unless we think we should just Arbor Elf here, but I like to start putting creatures on the table. Now the opponent did still keep 7, and although they had a slow start, they're going to have a ton of value. So where we need to overpower them is that they don't have enough mana to do all the plays that they want to be doing. They're Metalcraft now, so Galvanic Blast is going to hit for 4. They're going to Faithless Looting, sure. Do they get 2 Madness triggers? No, just 1 with the Fiery Temper, which is aiming where? I could see either location, either my face or the repurposer, to be honest. I think I'd rather see it hit my repurposer. Okay, it's going face, makes sense. And then they have 1 black mana left over, which they have a hard time doing anything with, to be honest. So that might just be combined with the blood token during my end step. Alright, let's play our land. Currently we have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. So we could Arbor Elf and Avenging Hunter. We could Arbor Elf and Bannerhide Crucial. Of course, they could have Kitchen Imp next turn, but it's sort of hard for them to do efficiently. And if I Arbor Elf, then I can put down a Nyxborn Hydra next turn. Okay. Avenging Hunter. We'll take advantage of this sort of awkward turn 3 from them. Let's just find more green sources and cast the Arbor Elf. Now there's a question here of whether I should Eldrazi Repurposer swing right now. I think I'm going to. Yes, they have Galvanic Blast to remove my Avenging Hunter, but if they're sending it at my creature, I don't think I mind too much, and then I could just block with the Arbor Elf if I have to. So I'm going to attack. I think I need to race them a little bit. They choose to take the damage, okay. I think I'll definitely block with the Avenging Hunter, and then if they get me by lightning bolting it, it's not the worst thing in the world. They play a tap land, which I'm happy to see. Nice and slow. Meaning they can't do anything with the Faithless Looting this turn, except just get back their Sneaky Snacker. Alright, I will block. If they're trying to play the board control game, I am happy to match them card for card. Alright, they're gonna Fiery Temper my creature. That's fine as well. Now let's see if they can draw an additional card this turn. They can with a Faithless Looting. They have a Voldaren Epic here, so they don't get back the Sneaky Snacker. Okay. Alright. What do we do now? So we can forge up the Eldrazi Repurposer, and then we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. So it'll be a... It'll deal 11 damage. Let's forge. I think I would prefer to just go a little bit wider, though. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. I could also just leave up the Arbor Elf. I think I want to push some damage this turn. So if I Jewel Thief, then I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana left over. Okay, I'll Jewel Thief into Nyxborn Hydra here. Let's bestow it. Or do I just cast it? How do I lose? You know, I'm just going to cast it to get something with reach so I don't lose to Kitchen Imp. I think that makes more sense. I'm not pushing damage this turn, but that's okay. This allows me to still attack with the Eldrazi Repurposer free and clear and take their Voldaren Epicure off the table if they're so inclined to block it. Now they need to find multiple Kitchen Imps to get through and take the initiative, but even then I can take it back. Now what I'm lacking is I only have 8 trample damage here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. So if I find a land, I can both reinforce and scavenge with the Bannerhide Crucial. They're going to get back the Sneaky Snacker, that's fine. And what do they discard? I'm expecting them to get some healing in. An Alms of the Vein, okay. And a Drossforge Bridge, I think. That could be worse. And they have 2 mana left over, with which they could put out a Kitchen Imp if they want to. 2 black. Is it going to be a Vampire's Kiss? A Voldaren Epicure, okay. So a good draw here would be another Nyxborn Hydra. I should imagine myself to be at 6 right now. So it's very important that if I don't think I can win, then I should hold back this Reacher to block the Sneaky Snacker and potential Kitchen Imps. Important top deck coming up here. If I am just to attack with these, then they'll go down to 12. And then, like, it's pretty likely that I can win next turn, but maybe not guaranteed. Especially if they get some healing from another Alms or Vampire's Kiss. They're taking their time here. I wonder if they're considering what to do with their Bolt or Galvanic Blast in hand. They can't do anything relevant with Madness currently. It's also possible that their game just crashed. So far, we haven't seen any Galvanic Blasts or Lightning Bolts. It's possible that they're not playing Lightning Bolt. They might have taken those out because... I mean, I think they would want to play them to answer the Arbor Elf. So they could have a lot of 1-mana burn spells. Yes, I will trap. We get a land. Okay. So what that means is that I can get some good damage in. I can deal... So this is 8, 9, plus 2, plus 4. So that's 15. So I think I have the win. So let's start by reinforcing here. Then if they bolt it, then we'll know that we need to change plans. Okay, they don't bolt it, so that's... Wait, did I miscount? I think I miscounted. I think I was off by 2. Or 1. Yeah, I was off by 1. Okay. So what this means is that I should reinforce the Jewel Thief and leave back the Nyxborn Hydra. So if I attack with these, that's a problem because they just don't have to block. They can go to 1. So I think I just have to attack with the Jewel Thief only and leave this back as a blocker. And then I'll have 14 damage worth of trample next turn. Okay. Unfortunately, I miscounted. Am I going to get a Bolt or a Galvanic Blast to the face? Let's find out. Nope, they are digging. Okay. So I guess they were thinking about that Trespasser's Curse, and they decided against it. So now they can... They have 1 Madness activator currently. They have a Faithless Looting in the graveyard, but if they Faithless Looting, they can't really do anything else. 2 mana for a Grab the Prize on a Fiery Temper. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 here. And then do you have 2 burn spells? You definitely could. It needs to be... Oh wait, no, never mind. They only have 1 mana left. Okay, do you have a land and 2 burn spells? You still definitely could. You would need a Mountain or Great Furnace, and Bolt Bolt, or Bolt Blast. Okay, there's the Great Furnace. What are your top 2? What are your... Do you have the perfect hand? They're going to swing in just to see if I, for some reason, don't block. Makes sense. I'll block here, and they can Galvanic Blast my Nyxborn Hydra, which would be fine. And then let's block with the big one. Okay, we GG's, we got there, just so. Oh my gosh, made it through. Well played, opponent. Let's full swing, and win the game. Alright, attack. Use your 0 mana fog. I dare you. Okay, thank goodness. Alright, 3-0, undefeated so far. Let's see how we do in the next round. Pretty good. Pretty good. See y'all in a minute. We have reached round 4 and won the dice roll. We will start it off. Let's see if we can clean up this event. So we have a turn 1 Arbor Elf into nothing much at all. So as much as I'd like to keep a turn 1 Arbor Elf, this is far too risky. So let's go ahead and mulligan. This is already looking a bit better. I've got... What I'm missing out on is some aggression eventually. But overall, I think we're doing fine. We'll keep this and throw back, I think, a land enchantment. Done. So if they're able to take our Arbor Elf off the board, it's okay. We can still get to an Eldrazi Repurposer eventually. Looks like, Izzet Scred? Okay. So let's Utopia Sprawl for green and play our Eldrazi Repurposer. Next turn, we potentially have an Avenging Hunter, if it doesn't get countered. If they decide to use their mana to just take our Arbor Elf off the table, we can just cast a second Eldrazi Repurposer, which we can use to start working towards the Avenging Hunter. Okay, so let's see if we hit a land here. If we hit a land, then we can... Oh, they missed their second land. That's really rough. How did they keep that? We hit a land enchantment, which is fine. Do we just enchant the mountain for green? I don't want to use the spawn if I don't have to. So I think I'm going to enchant the mountain for green. Eldrazi Repurposer. And swing 3. I'm really not sure what's going on their end. How did they just keep a tap land and a bolt? Okay, Lorien revealed, sure. Which means they can't counter my Avenging Hunter. Unless they have a Force Spike. Fairy Seer. Oh, okay. Izzet Fairies. Interesting. Okay, so we currently have 6 mana available. We can Malevolent Rumble, and then after that we can use the Avenging Hunter. Or we can Avenging Hunter into Malevolent Rumble. Let's Rumble, I guess. You should draw first when you can. Yeah, I don't think this can go wrong. We'll pick up an Avenging Hunter, and then we'll play that Avenging Hunter, so they won't know that we'll have another one. Pick up a Forest. We'll play the Forest, and we'll attack for 6. I guess what happened is they had a land and a Lorien revealed, but they thought the Arbor Elf was a big enough threat that they decided to bolt it and miss their land drop. That makes sense. Okay, they scoop. Let's go game 2. So we're against Izzet Fairies. I think in this situation, Breath Weapon might be pretty decent. I actually haven't run into this deck too much. We'll do the normal switch and take out the boarding parties. And then, what else do we drop? I think against Fairy decks, I do want tempo. I want to keep dropping these sort of mid-sized threats. They do have bolts for them, though. So because they're playing bolts, I think I'm going to take out the Jewel Thief instead of the Eldrazi Repurposer, but Jewel Thief is important. Access to red mana. I think with 2 Mountain, 4 Utopia Sprawl, 3 Jewel Thief. Okay, I talked myself out of it. I'm going to take out a Repurposer and resubmit. No, I changed my mind again. I'm going to take out a Nyxborn Hydra. Those can get clunky when you have too many of them. Alright, they're going first. This is a pretty bad hand, but there are worse. Even if they counter my Eldrazi Repurposer, I still get a spawn, which is good. I'm gonna keep it and see how I do with this slow start. Fairy Seer, sure. They'll be able to get plenty of ninja value. How are they scrying? 2 to top, okay, so they've got a pretty good start. Bushwhack is interesting. I could save Bushwhack to use on a ninja, but I won't be able to do it until turn 4. So I think I just want to be mana efficient and do this before they have a counter, and find my red source in case I need to Breath Weapon. No blocks. Do you have a Moon Circuit Hacker? No Moon Circuit Hacker. That's interesting. Brainstorm. Okay. And will they have the Lorien revealed? Maybe during the upkeep. Alright. Wild Growth is mana neutral in the best of times. It's kind of awkward to enchant mountains because it has sort of anti-synergy with Arbor Elf. So I think I'm just going to enchant the forest. Let's hope they're not on boomerangs. Lorien revealed during the upkeep. Yep, to clear the brainstorm, makes sense. And they just find a regular island. They play it. And they play an Augur. Okay. Augur finds a blue elemental blast. Alright. That's not too bad for me. It's basically just gonna keep Breath Weapon turned off, but there are worse things. Alright, since we picked up a Writhing Chrysalis, I think that's a better play than the Eldrazi Repurposer, so we'll go for it. In the next turn, we can double Repurposer, if we want to. We can also afford to keep this alive by sacrificing Eldrazi spawns in response to their Lightning Bolts or Galvanic Discharges. Another Augur. It's going to find another Blue Elemental Blast. Okay, so they've got 2 of those. Interesting. I don't have that much red. A Utopia Sprawl. Okay, that's mana neutral. Let's put our Eldrazi Repurposers on the table before we attack with the Writhing Chrysalis in case we need to sacrifice some spawns. In case there is a Boomerang, I'm going to split up my land enchantments. Green. Eldrazi Repurposer. We'll sacrifice 1. Put down another Eldrazi Repurposer. And attack with our Chrysalis. We can make it almost as big as we need to. I know this will let them get in with a Fairy Seer. I think that's okay. Ash Barrens, sure. For a snow-covered island, fine. They still have those blue elemental blasts. There's a snow-covered island. Lorien revealed? They're considering. If they Lorien revealed... Okay, Crimson Fleet Commodore. Alright. They shouldn't be able to counter this Nyxborn Hydra. They decline to get in for 1. They'll draw a card. Okay. I think they'll probably mostly have damage-based removal for the Writhing Chrysalis, now that it's actually hit the board. So I think it should be pretty safe to stack up a big Nyxborn Hydra on it. Alternatively, I could Nyxborn Hydra and Eldrazi Repurposer, but those aren't growing. I think I want to get in for more trample damage. We'll just bestow a big Nyxborn Hydra here. I don't think there's much they can do about that. We'll see if I'm wrong and they have the removal for it. Alright, and they scoop. GG, pretty easy 2-0. I don't know if there are more rounds. Let's see. But it was clean. See you on the next one, maybe. Okay, welcome back. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed those games. And I gotta tell you, it's not often that I get to post a victory lap, but with that 4-0 performance and an 8-1 in games overall, that was able to take me to a top 3 finish in the Fugete League out of almost 50 players, I think, so pretty good, pretty good. I got third because of tiebreakers, and they only did a playoff for the top 2. So I didn't get to actually enter contention for first place, but undefeated is close enough, if you ask me. And overall, the deck felt really, really good. I was sort of wondering if it was just a fluke, because I actually brought this deck to another community tournament the other day, and I actually technically won that one too, but it was sort of smaller. There were some weird occurrences where players were like disconnecting, and I went up against some non-meta decks. I wasn't really sure what to make of it. Plus, I was really sleepy that day, and I was making misplays that I just didn't really want to show. I didn't feel like they demonstrated the power of the deck properly. So I just sort of set that footage aside and decided to enter this tournament today, and the deck blew my socks off. It really rolled over most of the opponents, with the exception of that really, really close game against Rakdos Madness. Now, we weren't facing the top of the meta in most of our matches, so I would be curious to see how it performs against Kuldotha and against Broodscale, but on the whole, I am very impressed. So before I get into talking about the deck overall, I do want to bring up the 2 specific, I guess, trademark cards in this version of the build, which are Bannerhide Krushok and Bushwhack. So Bannerhide Krushok, I'm a believer now. This card is just so flexible. Again, it's strong in every single one of the modes. I used all 3 modes during the tournament today to strong effect. I don't think that I really got the opponent with the reinforce as like a combat trick. I can't remember, maybe it came up, but I definitely used the stats at least once to push for lethal. So really fun and really cool. Bushwhack was more inconclusive. I used this a couple of times to hit an extra land drop and just sort of weave this into my other plays because I had mana left over to, you know, take some weaker cards out of my deck and make sure that I was drawing gas. I didn't really get the fight spell mode of it to work very often, but I also didn't really try. This just needs a larger sample size to test, especially because it's just a 2 of, and it's a card that I can't find with Malevolent Rumble, so I only actually even see this card occasionally, so inconclusive, needs more testing. For the list overall, I would say that this deck has a similar level of consistency or inconsistency as the standard build of Gruul Ramp, but from a different source. This deck, its inconsistency is definitely in the land count. You can get a little bit screwed or a little bit flooded depending on how many lands you draw. And because we have, I think it's 16 lands plus the 2 Bushwhack, we have fewer, pseudo lands. We don't have any Generous Ents. We don't have any Oliphants. Sometimes we just don't have enough lands and we must mulligan. And the deck also sort of struggles if you have to mulligan a lot because it doesn't have as much top-end value, as many Cascaders as a standard Gruul list, so the mulligans are a bit more punishing. But with that said, I would say that it's also more consistent in the sense that Arbor Elf is sort of more of a nice to have than an essential piece of the deck. If our Arbor Elf gets lightning bolted, it's okay. We can still probably Malevolent Rumble into 3-drop, into 4-drop, into 5-drop. We can curve out. Arbor Elf helps us do unfair things and get like a turn 3 Avenging Hunter, but we don't need that. And against a lot of decks in Pauper, which, don't tend to have really huge on-rate creatures, just like 4-mana 4/4s and 4-mana 4/5s will just overrun the opponent, and it's fast enough. So I really like how this deck doesn't have the same fragility that standard Gruul Ramp has. So against some like Snuff Out decks or decks that play a lot of Bolt and Shock effects, things like that, I think this deck definitely has a better matchup, because if they just snuff out the Arbor Elf, you say, okay, I'm still going to get to play my game. But the nice thing about all of our sort of smaller to mid-range creatures is they're still big enough. Like a Jewel Thief is a 3/3, Bannerhide Cruciak is a 4/4, this is a 3/3. That's bigger than the opponent can usually board wipe. And these usually contend pretty well in combat as well. They're smaller than a Mirror Enforcer, but generally speaking, they're big enough. So I feel like they can't get swept up in board wipes, so the opponent has to use their cast downs, their snuff outs, their snaps, boomerangs, whatever, on these sort of small potatoes creatures, and then we say, all right, well, we're just going to play more next turn, and then play a Nyxborn Hydra, which is super resilient. And that's another cool thing about this deck, its resiliency. And standard Gruul ramp already sort of has that in spades with the Eldrazi Repurposer, replacing itself when it dies with an Eldrazi spawn, and the Nyxborn Hydra needing to basically get removed twice if it's bestowed. But this deck adds even more resiliency by also playing Bannerhide Cruciak. If this goes to the graveyard, no huge deal, we can still get value out of it again from the scavenge ability. So that is just super fun, in my opinion, and it gives the deck, I think, a more interesting and palatable matchup spread. I don't feel like we'll have as many matchups where they're just unwinnable situations. What else was I going to say? Oh, right. The sideboard is something that I would be interested in thinking about more or hearing your all thoughts on it. Right now, it's a little bit too streamlined for my taste. I don't tend to go for these 4 and 3 of sideboards, just me, sort of personal taste. But I don't really know why the Bannerhide Cruciak build of this deck always plays such a streamlined sideboard when all of the other standard builds play 1 and 2 and 3 ofs. You see cards in those lists like Weather the Storm, like Sheenan of Life's Roar, like Healer of the Glade, like Troublemaker Oof, Cast into the Fire. It's not really clear to me why those cards are not played in this deck. There are some cards that it totally makes sense that this deck omits. Like, it makes sense that it omits, let's say, Annoyed Altasaur in the main deck because you don't have the land cyclers to cascade into. Makes sense, but it's not clear to me why everybody is playing the same, like, 11 out of 15 cards in the sideboard, with the only substitution being between Breath Weapon and the Iguanar card that's sort of like a Trespasser's Curse. In the sideboard, I do like it. Don't get me wrong, I think every card here makes sense. Seal of Fire, again, for the Brood Scale matchups, Breath Weapon for red decks and white decks and elves, Sandstorm for red decks, and Vines of Vastwood for Brood Scale, plus some other sort of removal piles. You know, random stuff like walls, stuff like that. But overall, you know, there's room for innovation. I hope people innovate the sideboard a little bit, try out things like Weather the Storm. To me, was the biggest miss. I felt like I really had to scrape and claw for that win versus Rakdos Madness, and it would not have been as difficult if I had any kind of life gain in the 75. So overall, my assessment, this deck does not feel like a fluke. It feels really strong. It has legs. If you've never seen this before, whether or not you've played a previous version of Ponza or Gruul Ramp, I encourage you to give this a try. This Bannerhide Cruciak thing, you know, it looks boring at first glance, but it's actually really, really sweet. So that's going to do it for the video. I hope you all really enjoyed. Remember to leave a like, comment, and subscription if you like this Pauper content and want to see more Pauper content like this. And I will see you in the next one.